You are such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my video. I'm Brooke McKenna, but today's case is about murder at a billionaire's home. Now, when two individuals end up deceased in the strangest crime scene yet, the possible motive turns dark fast. Was one the victim while the other the killer? Did someone here want to die? Or was this a homicide with the killer being one of the many secrets from the victim's past? I also want to thank our sponsor, Magellan TV. If you watch me, you know it's one of my favorite places to watch documentaries, and they have all different kinds. They've gotten me invested in so many different genres that I would have never picked on my own, such as space, earth, ancient history. But of course, my all-time favorite pick is true crime, and I recently watched one that was so good. It was called Murdered Online, and it was about a girl named Rosalind Vanderveer who was looking for a job in South Africa online and ended up being kidnapped and murdered. The case is unsolved. It's heartbreaking, but I had never heard of it before and probably wouldn't have without Magellan. So if you have not tried Magellan TV and you want to get a 1-month free trial, all you have to do is go to try.magellantv.com/Brooke McKenna and you can get a 1-month free trial, which I highly recommend. Now let's get back to the story. So it was 2017 in Canada, and the Sherman family lived in Toronto. This was 75-year-old Barry and his 70-year-old wife, Honey. Their home was on Old Colony Road in the North York neighborhood. Barry, whose full name was actually Bernard Charles, had been born to Herbert and Sarah, and his father was a business partner for a zipper company while his mother was an occupational therapist. Now, his father passed away when he was only 10, so it was just him and his mother for the next, about 8 years. But Barry was really thriving. He was extremely smart, and he went on to graduate the Forest Hill Collegiate Institute with top marks. Now, from there, Barry began the University of Toronto, and he was in the engineering science program. He was only 16 at this time. It was the youngest to enter this kind of program, but he knew that he wanted to do even more than that. Barry knew what he wanted to do from a very young age. He had gone with his father to work, and he ended up having to count the zippers and file them away, and he was doing it so much faster than any of his father's employees, and he knew that his future was in business. He found ways to do things that made him fast and easy, and he just had that sort of mind. But while he was studying in college, he actually was working for his uncle, and his uncle owned this entire pharmaceutical company that was called Empire Laboratories, and it was the largest in the country at the time. They had been the first to get the rights to manufacture diazepam and quite a few popular medications, but Barry wanted a challenge, and so after graduation, which he won the Governor's General Award for his thesis, he decided to go on to get a doctorate and a PhD. Then around this time, his uncle, who owned this pharmaceutical company, and his wife, they both died within 17 days of one another. They had 4 children who ended up being adopted by another family, but this meant that the Empire Laboratories was up for sale. So Barry decided that he was going to purchase this company. The only condition was that if he was going to purchase it, he was going to have to give all of the children who were the Winter children, their last name was Winter, he was going to have to give them a job when they turned 21. And they would also have the opportunity to buy about a 5% stake in the company once they got a little bit older. So he said, yes, that is wonderful, and I'm going to take over this company for my uncle. However, 2 years later, he ended up selling the company to invest in another pharmaceutical company called New York's Bar Laboratories that manufactured Prozac, which meant that the Winter children would not be getting a job at the company their father had owned before his death. Now, Barry was known to be a hard worker, in fact, a workaholic. He was a risk taker and he was a disruptor, but he was generous and trusting of everyone. And around this time, he had met a woman named Honey. She was from Austria. She was born to 2 Holocaust survivors, and she had come to Canada to attend the University of Toronto, which is the same place that Barry had gone. They ended up getting married in 1971, and shortly after, Barry started his own pharmaceutical company. Now, this was called Apotex, which quickly grew to be one of the most successful pharmaceutical companies in Canada. This was even above his uncle's, which was called Empire. Now, Barry felt that this was his purpose. It was very successful. It was thriving. And it was how he was making his fortune. Barry and Honey had been together for 46 years by 2017, and the couple had 4 children together by this point. They were adults at this time, but they were Lauren, Jonathan, Alexandra, and Kaylin. Now, their mother, Honey, was loved by everyone in the community. She was kind of that socialite, that one who was always going to community events, putting them on. She hosted charity events, and she was highly respected for her donations and her willingness to help the less fortunate. I mean, there were galas she would donate to hospitals and universities, and even though this couple had an abundance of money, they were no stranger to giving back. Through the company, they had sent about $50 million to disaster zones throughout the years, and Barry would also loan money to employees who needed help. By this point in 2017, the children had grown up and gone their own ways, and Barry and Honey decided to move closer to downtown Toronto for the socialization. I mean, they were billionaires, and they had a lot of opportunities and a lot of work that they had to do, especially in that location, and living kind of in the suburbs just wasn't working anymore. Barry was actually the 12th wealthiest Canadian at this time, and they decided that they were going to build a home in a place called Forest Hill. This had a swimming pool, a retractable skylight, and living quarters for the staff. But they still needed to sell their current home, and that's when they reached out to real estate agents, and they put their home on the market for about $7 million. It was a 2-story, 12,000 square foot home with a giant basement pool. It had a spiral staircase as well, and it was absolutely glamorous and was a mansion. Even though this home had a wonderful basement pool, they really didn't go down there because Honey had knee problems and she didn't like walking down the stairs, and so it was really an unused pool. But on December 15th, they were going to be showing their home. Well, the real estate agent was, to buyers who were very interested. Barry and Honey planned to be out of the home when the buyers were coming to tour, but that day, the real estate agent, who was Elsie, didn't get a hold of them, but figured, you know, they were out of the home anyway, and they were trying to sell this home. So the real estate agent came over and got a key out of this lockbox that they had set up for her to be able to enter whenever she needed to. The only people to be home were supposed to be the couple's staff that they always had in and out. And so at 10 a.m., the tour with this real estate agent, who was Elsie Stern, began on the upstairs levels of this home. They were going through the master bedroom, they went down the spiral staircase, they went to the kitchen, and then they made their way downstairs to look at this amazing pool. However, Elsie walked in first, and she abruptly turned around and forced everybody out of the basement and out of the home. She had seen something that she wasn't quite sure what it was, but she knew something was very wrong. The buyers had even mentioned that they believed they had seen the homeowners downstairs. Now, when she went back downstairs to get a better look, Elsie found 2 bodies by the pool. Now, she had turned on the lights, and when she first went in with the buyers, she had seen 2 basically heads floating by the pool, and it looked like they were leaning against the railing, and she thought that the couple was doing some sort of weird yoga thing, and so she didn't want to disturb them. But upon closer look, she realized they were dead. There was no blood anywhere, but these 2 were hanging with a belt around their neck from the railing next to the pool. They were facing away from the pool towards a wall, and they were both dead. Elsie had called the police around 11:45, and that is when the investigators came, and the buyers actually left because although they were informed of what was happening, they were from China and they believed seeing dead bodies was a bad omen, so they went ahead and went home, but investigators went inside to find what they were working with. The realtor, the agent, the housekeepers, their personal trainer were all inside and were all being questioned, especially about what they had seen that day. Now, the realtor said that the crime almost looked like a Halloween scene or some sort of fake murder. But the housekeeper and the personal trainer said they got there around 8 a.m. and the alarm was off, which was highly unusual. They then went inside to where Barry was normally in the kitchen reading his newspaper. However, the housekeeper had picked up the newspaper because he didn't get it that morning. He was then not in the kitchen, and the personal trainer was supposed to work with him around that time before working with Honey afterwards. And so after a while, the housekeeper went upstairs to see if maybe they were still sleeping and needed anything or were okay. And that's when she found that the bed was made, but it was kind of messy. They were not inside, and in the bathroom where Honey usually used the sink, it was completely dry. They figured maybe they had gone out of town. They had a trip to Florida planned in a few days, and they wondered if maybe they left early, but they believed that they were not home. So the personal trainer actually decided to leave because she wasn't needed. Honey's SUV was also in the driveway, and she would often leave it at the home when she was going on a trip, so this made sense as to what they were theorizing. But the housekeeper also said that she could feel something very heavy in the air that day. However, Elsie, the real estate agent who had called the police, had done so an hour and 45 minutes after finding their bodies. She had first called Honey's sister, Mary, who she had spoken to through this whole process of, putting their house on the market, and she told her what she had found before calling the police. Now, it's unknown why she called the family before or why she didn't call the police immediately, but it's possibly because they were well-known individuals who were very wealthy, and she wanted the family members to know before everybody else did, and the press got a hold of the story, but we're not really sure why. Now, the crime scene was perhaps the strangest part of all, and this was because Barry was found by investigators to be seated. He had the leather belt around his neck holding him up, and he actually had his right leg crossing over his left. Honey was lying beside him, and she had a bruise on her face. Barry kind of had this coat on him, but it was like it was shrugged off his shoulders, and their arms were both behind them, although not bound. One belt that was used on them was thought to be Barry's, but the other belt, they had no idea where it had come from because Honey was hanging from the belt too. Now, when investigators started looking further into the basement, they noticed that there was a bathroom down there where Honey's cell phone was. Now, her friends and the people who knew her said that she never went into that bathroom because she didn't go downstairs. So it was weird that her phone would be in there. Barry's gloves, as well as some paperwork about the inspection of that house, were kind of strewn on the floor nearby, like the hallway you would take to get to the pool. There was no sign of forced entry. However, the basement door was unlocked and there was a window that was open. It was said that the basement door was unlocked a lot, and the window was open because they were doing some painting down there and they were letting the fumes out. There were 9 entrances to the home, and everybody said that if somebody had come to one of those entrances and needed help, both Barry and Honey would have let them in no problem, no matter what they needed or who they were. But then again, they wouldn't have been in the basement because they didn't go down there. They didn't use that pool. So them being there was the part that didn't make any sense. Now, the way that they were posed was not something that appeared to be just how they landed or how, their bodies fell when they were put up on the belts. Because investigators had gone into a room that was like, the living room of this downstairs area, and they had found a sculpture that looked entirely too similar to be a coincidence. It was from the 1970s, and there were 2 human figures who were sitting on speakers, and the male had his right leg crossed over his left, just like Barry did. And the female was sitting right next to him, just like Honey was. The only difference was Honey didn't have her feet out in front of her like the sculpture did because she was lying on her side. The question was, who killed this couple worth more than $4.6 billion inside of their own home? Well, strangely enough, investigators of the Toronto Police Service Homicide Squad began to classify this as a murder-suicide, or a double suicide. The bodies were taken in for medical examination, and the coroner found that the cause of death was ligature neck compression. They had also died 36 hours prior to being found. Now, investigators began working on the theory that Barry had killed his wife and then killed himself. They were looking for a suicide note. They were looking to obtain medical records to see if maybe one or both of them were sick, and that is why one of them would want to take their life, or they would want to go out together. None of that was found. It didn't appear that either were sick. 3 days prior to the murders, on December 12th, Honey had missed a meeting for the Baycrest Center Foundation. She was on the board, she was very passionate about it, and she never missed a meeting, but she did that day, and she didn't even tell them she wasn't coming. So they ended up contacting her, and she did email them back saying that she was dealing with some stuff. She didn't elaborate, and she never made it. But the last people to see this couple alive actually saw them 2 days prior on December 13th. Barry and Honey had both went to Apotex, which was their company, to have a meeting with the builders of their new home. Now, this was with a custom builder, an architect, and a subcontractor. They had all gone in around 5 p.m. It was said that Honey didn't often go to this company. She mostly just, stayed at home, did her own thing, and didn't go with Barry. But they did have this meeting here, so Honey did go. And it was only about 30 minutes that she stayed, and then she went ahead and headed home, whereas Barry stayed to do some more work. Honey had called a friend on her way home, and this friend was said to be the last to talk to her, and Barry's staff member said that he was in on this meeting with Barry and Honey and all of the people for their home, and Barry was saying he didn't know why they needed such a big house because he had around 10 years left of his life. The staff member said he didn't appear stressed or unhappy or anything, he just kind of made that comment. And that night, he eventually went home, and then the vice chair of Apotex got an email from him. This was around 8:23, and he responded to him an hour later. Barry never really responded back. So the next day, Barry and Honey were both getting calls and emails, and they weren't responding to any of them. Now, like I said, Elsie, the real estate agent, tried to send them an email about having a showing the next day, and no one answered. But like I mentioned, she had a key. They were also thought to be out of town, so she thought that it was okay for her to go ahead and go in. Elsie had told investigators that she had once spoken to Barry about having cameras inside, and he had said that he had one by the pool, but she didn't know if it worked, and neither did he, and that no camera was actually found. But the family had said they had also begged Barry to install some cameras, but he said that he didn't need them, and he was kind of a man who was not afraid of anything. No one had seen or heard anything strange happen the day prior to them being found, which was when it was believed that they were murdered, but investigators began to get warrants, and the offense listed on this warrant to be able to be granted that warrant was one death. Honey's, not Barry's. Barry and Honey's children were outraged at the path that the investigators were taking. They urged the police to do a thorough criminal investigation of the double homicide, and they believed that there was no way that their father killed their mother or they both killed themselves. They said that there was no history of abuse or domestic violence between the two of them. They had trips planned in the future. Their daughter Alexandra said that the relationship was rocky through the years, like most relationships, but it was actually getting better now that the kids had grown up and moved out. They appeared to be more in love, they weren't arguing, and they were also coming together to take care of some of the grandkids. Their other daughter, Lauren, said yes, they fought and they argued, but it was more about screaming and less about being physical. But their daughter, Kaylin, said when they were growing up, her parents weren't very close or in love, but they did seem to be getting closer. However, their son had something different to say. This was Jonathan, who said that his parents were complicated people with enemies. Now, he said that his father was brilliant, but he sort of did lack an emotional and social intelligence, and he was unfiltered, but he was also very genuine. He said his mother was smart, abrasive, high energy, and blunt, but not in an evil way. The vice chair said that Barry wouldn't harm himself or anyone at all. Now, one of the motives that many gave for Barry's possible breakdown that caused him to do this was money surrounding Apotex. There were lawsuits and layoffs happening. However, the vice chair said, Barry and his family had enough money that they never struggled with feeling like they were going to be, out of a whole bunch of money if the company went under. Yet there was a court case a few weeks prior to this that had cost them $500 million due to a drug patent. And a friend of Barry's named Joel actually believed that someone was hired to kill this couple. That's when this family contacted a lawyer, and he hired a private investigator named Tom Klett, who was a retired Toronto police investigator, and he was going to look into the double homicide theory, a theory that investigators refused to touch. He also hired a retired chief forensic pathologist named Dr. David Chiasson, who was hired to conduct a second autopsy. Dr. David found that there was skin missing from both Honey and Barry's wrists. Now, this was allegedly taken off before the first pathologist could even look at the bodies because they wanted to do a biopsy on the injuries around the wrist to see if they were old or new. The injuries were believed to be from a rope or a plastic tie, but the results of the biopsy had yet to be revealed. But Dr. David had seen photographs of the injuries. He believed that they were most likely recent and from being bound prior to death. He also found that Barry and Honey hadn't been strangled with the same belts that were holding them up when they were found. It was strangulation, but it was with another object. This was not a double suicide or a murder-suicide as far as Dr. David could see. This was a double homicide. This was kept private because the funeral was about to begin, and it was public and live streamed, and 6,500 people were in attendance. Jonathan spoke to the crowd as well as the other children.
We are taking some comfort in knowing that you two are together forever, and neither of you had to suffer like we are suffering now. You were like a lock and a key, each pretty useless on your own. But together, you unlocked the whole world for yourselves, and for us, and for so many others. We promise to carry on your legacy of greatness and giving from now until forever.
Then a month later, on January 26th, the Toronto police finally held a press conference, and they finally admitted that this was a double homicide. Detective Sergeant Susan Gomez announced that the main theory was a targeted attack, and they planned to question everyone with access to this home and the lockbox with a key that was installed for the real estate agent. They refused to talk about motives or suspects, but also asked for witnesses. Yet it had been over a month that this killer had gone free because the investigators refused to look at a different theory. Barry and Honey's children offered a $10 million reward for information, and their lawyer, Brian Greenspan, actually announced to the public that they felt like the police had failed to collect the proper evidence. Though they claimed that they had 51 officers working the case, 240 people had been interviewed, 127 witness statements had been collected, and 2,000 hours of surveillance footage were being combed through due to a neighbor's security camera. Now, from this footage, they had actually seen a man going into the Sherman's home 3 times through the front door between 9 and 10 a.m. on December 14th, the day they were thought to be murdered. He had drove his dark-colored 4-door sedan to their driveway, and he kind of just went in through the front door before driving off 29 minutes later. However, all of this footage was grainy, and they couldn't exactly see what this man looked like. The homeowners who gave the police this footage said that they didn't know who this man was. They had never seen him before, but also 4 days prior to this, they had seen a strange man and woman walking down the street together. The woman had like a long coat on, and they also didn't belong to the neighborhood. And there was footage of this couple walking, and they looked at it, and all they could see was that this couple went up to the Sherman home that day, and then they left. But this could all be explained by the fact that this home was on the market and people were looking to buy it. However, that was when more was revealed about this couple behind the scenes, and it turned out that they weren't the perfect couple. You see, Barry had this successful pharmaceutical business, yet he had other business ventures, and some were not so good. You see, he had put money into a yacht chartering company only for it to turn out to be a fraud. The same thing happened when he put money into a nutritional supplement, and he had a majority stake in this. The owner of that was actually imprisoned, and Barry had to sell half of his stake at Apotex to get back the money that he lost. He then partnered with a fruit juice maker named Frank D'Angelo, and the two started doing business together. And basically, Barry was putting in all of this money, and they were always going bankrupt. And Barry was losing like 100 million Canadian dollars. Yet he continued to finance things for Frank. He even kept working with him after he was arrested for sexual assault and obstruction of justice. He was never convicted of this, but he was arrested for it. Barry then began working with a man who had just gotten out of prison and was later convicted of fraud. But Barry then filed a lawsuit against him, saying that he was just pocketing all the money Barry would give him. That is why many people said that he was a trusting man, sometimes very trusting and too trusting for everybody around him. But then it was allegedly found after Barry's death that he had been making large donations to several different foundations in his own name or in Apotex's name. And he would get the tax credit and would be loaned back that money, totaling around $6 million. This was way more than anybody else would be able to get a loan for, but because he was giving money, he was able to get that much back. But when it came to family life, Barry really had a hard time balancing that in his job. He would stay back during family vacations to work rather than be with the family. And even though he was wealthy, he refused to buy new cars. And for his 50th birthday, Honey went out and bought him a red sports car, only for him to tell her to take it back. You see, while Barry was known as this big softy and a philanthropist, he also had another side to him, a side that not everyone got to see. A man who had dealt with Barry on drug development said that basically he was the only person that he had ever met with no redeeming features whatsoever. He was also called a deplorable human who sought to manipulate the system to enrich himself and impoverished Canadian patients who used his drugs. Though Barry had always said if we're thieves, we're Robin Hoods. However, Apotex did have 1,200 cases against them, and Barry was at the front of the courtroom every single time. His coworkers said he would bully and intimidate the government to get his way, and this would work. He had even gotten back $2 million he had spent on building their first home because he took all of the contractors to court saying that it was a disaster. And so he won back all that money. But there's a huge difference in not liking someone over business and someone being, strong-willed and pushing the limits of the government and the rules and the laws, and someone being a killer who is capable of killing their own wife. And that is what many were hinting at when they were talking about this other reputation that Barry had. Although through everyone talking about this second reputation, it showed that his son was right. He did have a lot of enemies. The question was, did one of these enemies take it to the level of murdering Barry and Honey? Now, it was found that 6 years prior to the murders, in 2011, Barry's cousins sued him. Now, this was the Winter children that we talked about at the beginning of the story, whose father and mother died, and then Barry, took over the company, and they were supposed to get jobs and, a percentage of stake in the company. Well, they ended up not being able to because Barry sold the company. They were adults by this point, and they believed they deserved 30% of the money from when he had sold his portion of Empire. This would be about $1 billion, and Barry said no, but he tried paying them off with a few $1,000,000. But they said they didn't want to take it because that business was supposed to be their right, and he took that away from them when he sold it. This whole case about this money was ongoing until September of 2017, 3 months before the murders. That is when the judge ruled in favor of Barry, who owed the Winter children nothing. It was also believed that Barry was targeted by the Canadian wing of the Jewish Defense League, which was on the FBI's watch list. He had also been sued by Israel's largest generic drug maker, and he was working to create a pot pill for those suffering with chronic pain, depression, anxiety, PTSD, and seizures. Barry himself even believed he would be killed. He had once said, for $1,000 paid to the right person, you can probably get someone killed. Perhaps I'm surprised that hasn't happened. Yet this targeted attack may not have been by someone who wanted to steal his drug formulas or take away his money or some elaborate plot. It may have been done by his own blood. You see, after the lawsuit of his cousins, the Winters, Barry got the judge to order them to pay him $300,000 for his legal fees. So now not only did they not get any of the money they had gone for, now they owed him money. And they were notified of this a week before the murders. The theories ran wild when this was revealed. Everybody believed that they had something to do with this, but one of them came forward. This was 56-year-old Kerry Winter, and he claimed he had no worries about sitting down and talking with the detectives, and this was during a TV interview he was doing, and he said that he had absolutely nothing to do with it. In fact, the day prior to them being found or being murdered, he was at a 12-step program for Cocaine Anonymous. And then the day that they were murdered, he was at a construction site all day because he was the site manager. He said that that night he went home, he watched Peaky Blinders, and he slept. He also talked to his girlfriend, but nobody could confirm where he was because he lives alone. He said he had never even been to Barry and Honey's home. He was not close with them, obviously, if he was suing his own cousin. But Kerry didn't have a problem in this TV interview with telling them that he did not like Barry, that he had thought about killing him in the past. He said Barry only cared about money and not who he destroyed in the process of making money, and he said he didn't do it even though he wanted to. But Kerry also had an incredible story to tell. He said that in the 1990s, Barry had asked him to kill Honey. He had gone into the office at Apotex, and Barry was, in his office, and he asked him to whack his wife. He said that he knew that Kerry had lots of bad friends that could do something like this, and he wanted him to ask those friends. He said Barry wanted to do this because he couldn't stand being in the same room as her anymore, and, Kerry said he never went and asked anybody to do this, but he did tell two of his friends about him asking, and he never told the police. By this point in the interview, he was no longer hanging out with those bad kind of people. He was 6 years sober with children and a full-time job, and then he said he would do a polygraph test about, seeing if this was the truth or not. So he did this, and he failed. Now, the polygraph test was just to see if, the story about Barry wanting his wife killed was real, and that's what he failed. I don't believe that he was questioned about the actual murders.
I was betrayed. My cousin hurt me, and now I want to hurt him. I probably had reasons to lash out, to do the dirty deed.
This would be asked of you by anybody. Did you kill Honey and Barry Sherman?
Absolutely not. I had nothing to do with it. I don't know who did it.
Investigators were said to question him as a person of interest, but found nothing really to connect him. And another man that was theorized to have a motive to kill Barry would have been Frank D'Angelo. Now, this was the man that Barry continued to give money for all of his ventures, and he was continuing to lose Barry money. They had worked together for 15 years, and Frank was always the one getting in trouble while Barry was kind of getting away with it. However, it's said that Frank wishes that he could have saved his close friend, and that he believes someone made Barry an offer he couldn't refuse, and yet he did refuse it. There was also the fact that the company Apotex's chemist was fired 11 months prior and was sued. You see, he was believed to have gone rogue and stolen millions of dollars worth of drug formulations in order to create his own company. His name was Mulazman Hussein, and he had quite the motive, obviously, for being, outed as stealing all of this and then being sued for it as well. Now, it's unknown if investigators have looked into this man at all, have ever questioned him or not, but in 2019, the crime scene was actually excavated along with the home. After what had happened, no one really had a desire to live here, and this is when it was also found that a 911 call had come the day of the murders from around this neighborhood. This wasn't the one made by the realtor on December 15th. This was the day prior, down the street, the morning of December 14th. A homeowner down the road got a knock on their door, and when they opened the door, a man introduced himself as a police officer that was out of uniform. And he said that a 911 call had been placed and it had come from their home. Everyone inside said they didn't call 911 and they had no idea what he was talking about. The next day, when they saw a crime scene down the street, they went up to investigators and they told them about this 911 call. The officers told them maybe the wires were crossed and, we just thought that it was at your house. So the question was, did someone from the Sherman residence call 911 the day they were murdered? If so, who? Was it Barry? Was it Honey? Was it the killer? There were also robberies found to have happened in this neighborhood about a year before the murders, and millions worth of items were being stolen. One of them even lowered themselves into the skylight of the Sherman's home and stole a whole bunch of Honey's jewelry, but no deaths had occurred because of this. Then on November 25th of 2020, the Toronto police revealed that they had a person of interest, but gave no further information. 2 months later, a story came out about how their son Jonathan owed his dad $50 million, and he was asked to pay that back a few weeks before they were found deceased. Now, Jonathan said he wasn't involved in the murders, and his father was having difficulty with his finances around that time and needed him and his business partner to kind of give back some of the money that he had loaned them, and so they were doing so. He said he wouldn't have killed his dad just because he needed $50 million to get through a crisis. And Jonathan also said that his father always supported him and his business, and so he said he could handle that, the public had these theories about him. But then his sister began to believe that maybe he had something to do with it and refused to speak to him. 2 months after that, it was March of 2020, and a source close to law enforcement said that an arrest could be imminent due to the pattern of behavior over the last 2 years that they had been watching. A name was not revealed, but then the estate records that were sealed from the public were released a few days ago in June of 2021. These stated that Honey did not have a will, but Barry did have two. All of his money was going to be divided equally amongst his 4 children. This would basically give each of them no motive to have wanted to hurt him. They were equally going to get that money. They will get the first installment at age 25, then 30, then the rest of it at 35. However, there was a rumor that Barry was thinking about changing his will to give most of his money to Honey or to charity, but he hadn't changed it yet, and it's unknown if that was really true or not. Alexandra, their daughter's husband, Bradley, was the one who asked for the documents to be sealed because he knew that the identity and the motivations of the perpetrators were unknown. They didn't know if it was money motivated and if knowing who got their money was going to make the killers come after them. They tried to fight the records being unsealed, but it didn't work, and so they officially were.
It's definitely a big struggle. All my siblings and I have been struggling since, for the past 18 months. For me personally, it comes in waves and it's unpredictable. I couldn't leave my home for several months because I was too scared, right? I wish we could have an answer so that everyone could sleep a little bit easier at night. And I still hope and have faith that that will happen, that there will be hopefully an arrest and a conviction. I hope that that's the case, because living in a state of fear and uncertainty is really hard.
What's the hardest part of it?
Just not knowing why this would happen to good people who are, lights in their communities, pillars of strength to everybody who knew them. It doesn't make sense to me that anyone could harm them.
This case is still open and ongoing. How they were posed, how they were murdered, and that just seems very significant to this case, especially that they were posed just like the statue. It makes it much more personal. It is unsolved, and if you have any information, I will leave the link down below or the phone number that you can call, and you can be anonymous when you leave any tips. I highly recommend you do so. They deserve for justice to be given to them, and please let me know what you think. Any of your theories. Always be respectful. It's hard because when someone close to the family is suspicious, you don't want to offend the family of the victims, but at the same time it can be necessary to have to look into the family. So it's that fine line there of being respectful and just being honest. But please let me know what you think, and don't ever forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces. Remember that I post so much content, so if you want to start a playlist, there's one right here, and if you want to watch my latest video, it's here. I also have a second channel called Genuine Gems if you want to check that out. Okay, bye.